wide can you get? What were you at, like 12 inches, 18, 24?
It was probably like 8
97?
inch. I was in Vermont last year, and this place, I mean, it was wider than my foot was long. I think they were probably like 14-inch wide.
I swear,
it was insane.
The bedroom I grew up in, one whole room, one board.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Associate Editor Matt Milham and back Editorial Director Justin Fink.
Hello, guys.
It's good to have you back here.
I am here. I've been getting some emails that people thought I dropped off completely.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
All right.
I'm glad you didn't. You can email your questions to us at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast.
Cool.
We got some exciting news, you know.
Yeah? What's that?
Well, there's a special deal to podcast listeners
Oh, yes.
at the Taunton store.
Yes. This is like, when people hear this, for us, we're just getting into holiday season.
Right.
Like the shopping, people are starting to think about shopping and like, well, what do I buy, people? And I get that question sometimes, and so here we go.
I
missed out on Halloween.
I should be thinking about the shopping already
Yeah.
for the holidays. But if you go to Fine Home Building's holiday store, thetauntonstore.com, so you can go to the Fine Home Building section of that and get 20% off things like the 4 Pro Buy Pro series, the Code Check series, and the SketchUp for Builders. So 20% off is nothing to sneeze at, right?
Yeah, that SketchUp for Builders is very cool. I'm thinking about recommendations now. Something that's not on that list that I think is really cool for somebody, or at least I enjoyed it, was the that renovation book. It's just called Renovation. I think we're on the 5th iteration now. Litchfield. Excellent book. Excellent book. It's thick, hardcover, and it covers A to Z, like things you're going to run into. That's one of my all-time favorites. The other one is the Complete Illustrated Guide to Building. I believe that's the name.
Was that the Charlie Wing book?
Yeah, it's a soft cover book.
Also very good.
That's great for somebody who just needs a reference. So.
And I say for the pros out there, Code Check series is a life-changing title, right? It is a very intelligently designed way to make sure that your homes are code compliant.
It's one of our most popular books all time for a reason. It's super, super helpful.
It's super helpful. And it's bulletproof, right? It's spiral binding, flip style, very good.
Yeah, laminated. I mean, it just boils everything down to just like a handful of pages somehow.
Yeah,
I know. If the code book were only so intelligently written.
Yeah.
And I mean, this, at the risk of this sounding like a commercial, I've just been trying the latest version of the Fine Homebuilding Archive, which is, for people that use our website, it's a little different than the website. It's a little standalone program.
So it's all of the Fine Home Building content in the magazine
from issue 1 all the way up to, what are we on now? I think it goes through 280, 278, something like that.
Searchable.
So you can, the search function is awesome. It's so good. It works so well.
Or
you can just flip through page by page for any issue you want.
I love to do both of those things. I like to look at the old issues especially because they're very entertaining oftentimes.
Awesome.
And if you really need to search a subject and get the best search, that's the one. That's what we use here.
To the point where, like, it has advertised. If you can remember, I saw an ad for that 15 years ago, you can type in the keywords for that and it will come up. It's awesome. And it's all on a little thumb drive.
It's fun to look at the old Acme tool ads, like that has every single Bosch SKU on, like in a list.
Yeah.
You can see what stuff costs.
Yeah, see some old authors when they had hair.
Yeah. Yeah. Back when Mike Gerton used to wear those Blade sunglasses.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
He was kicking some sunglasses on.
Yeah. Short shorts.
So
still wearing those.
So you're back here. Where have you been? People have asked me, and
Well, I needed a break from y'all. No, it's my responsibilities at Fine Home Building have changed significantly. I've got a lot more piled on my plate, so I asked Patrick if he would help me out by stepping in and hosting a couple of podcasts. And after listening to Patrick do it, he's such a natural at it and is doing such a good job that I just took my time coming back.
I'm gonna cry.
And it didn't seem appropriate to come back and then sit in the host chair again. So I think I'm going to just kind of since I have the authority to do this, I'm going to declare myself to be one of the rotating cast. And I hope to just show up here as much as I can and offer what I can to the show. But I was having trouble finding all of the back-end production time to do the podcast on top of everything else.
It takes more time than I would have guessed.
It's a lot of work. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. It's one of the best things we do here.
It's definitely one of the best things we do here.
I would like to reassure everybody that some of the things I'm working on by not being here are so cool, and they're coming. And, video series, things that we have in the works, you're going to see awesome stuff coming from us. So if you can forgive me for not being here, I promise I'll repay you by other things we're going to be showing you soon.
And we'll try and do our best job in the meantime.
Yes, it has not suffered.
Cool.
Somebody did write a letter that I talk too much, so they're happy to have me not here.
That one guy.
Yeah.
That one person.
So what have you been doing at the homestead?
Oh, God. So I got some vacation coming up. I was just talking to my wife about this. I got some vacation coming up, and I'm having trouble deciding what I'm going to do. Because for me, vacation, there's the vacations where you go somewhere, and I already did that this year.
Yep.
This vacation is what am I going to get done? I need a project. I need something to lose myself in.
So this is a week-long project, you figure?
Yeah.
And is the aim to get a good start on something or do something start to finish?
The aim is really to just spend time doing it. I mean, honestly, it's to have that be my everyday. Like to get up in the morning, go to the shop or go wherever I'm going to, if it's an outside project, just have it, forget about everything else for a week.
Yeah.
I need storm windows. I say it every year that I'm going to build them, and I never do it.
So what do you have now? Any?
I have old wood double hung windows. It's an old house, and I have some storm windows. None of them are really well sealed.
So you would make wooden storm windows to match the others and improve their performance.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I have at this point so few, and they're like a variety of styles that I might just start them all over again. I mean, it's not. I was figuring I'd make them out of poplar and then buy single pane glass. We're not talking about a lot of money.
No.
It's not. It's a lot of tedious work when you have to make. I think I counted 21 of them or something.
Oh, and then painting them, which would be way
well. But
worse
I got
than
a sprayer.
Yeah.
So and without the glass in them,
right?
You're just hanging frames up and spinning them around and spraying all sides. That's gonna be the most fun part.
I don't have a sprayer, so that would never dawn on me that could be fun.
Yeah. That's like the big payoff. You want to get to that point, so they look good. But so that's one option. It's not really the sexiest or most exciting project to sink your teeth into. That's my only real concern. I also really need to rebuild carriage doors in my garage. So I tried to pull this trick. My wife's probably listening to this right now. I tried to pull this trick on her, where I kind of, we're having people over for Thanksgiving, and I tried to kind of spin it like, you're probably going to want me to do these garage doors first because of the company coming over, right? And she was like, no, actually, I'd rather have the storm windows.
So then you had to back the truck into the garage.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to, escalate my campaign.
Yeah.
Admittedly, those will be more expensive to do anyway, and money is always a concern on home projects. So.
I don't know about poplar as a wood choice for
storm windows.
Yeah,
they're going to be painted. What's the concern?
But poplar's not a very rot-resistant wood species.
Well, they shouldn't have any water that they're coming in contact with. They're painted on all sides.
I don't know. I think white pine would be the traditional New England choice.
I don't have a problem with white pine either. The question then becomes going to clear pine and whether that's. First of all, it'd be nice to work with pine that might actually make the job a little more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think they'll
Nothing
last
smells
longer.
better than that. So let me ask you this: I assume you mean Eastern white pine, because there's a lot of varieties,
and that's what you do here.
Yeah. Would you also consider that for carriage doors?
Definitely.
Really?
Yeah.
As a stained finish,
or painted, either one.
Well, I mean, I would do stained. So what I need to do then is just buy enough white pine.
Yes.
For the storm windows that I'm left over with enough to make 4 carriage doors.
Yeah. To say I could only get logs and then have it milled down.
Yeah. All right. I like where this is going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to do Doug fir for the carriage doors, but it is admittedly more expensive.
And it's very difficult to keep paint on. Well, you said you want to stain anyway, but it's tough to keep
I was going to try and match my front doors, Doug fir, and it's stained. But, I mean, pine, you could easily make it come close. Doug fir is a pain. I love it, but it's
You mean
pain to
working
work
with it, yes.
Splinters.
Yeah, you need to wear titanium gloves to work with.
It's not even just that you get the splinters, it's that you're on the last steps of it, and then a giant corner flakes off.
Right. Ruining your work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I've been working on.
What about you, Matt? You've been telling us about your wet basement for a while. How's that?
I think that's resolved.
Oh, come on. You said this before, and then it wasn't.
So you think it was the cover on the...
I think there may have been
window
two
well.
possible things. One, I think the fact that the sump line was
Plugged.
Yeah, apparently plugged.
Oh.
There was some like landscaping rocks apparently dropped on the end of that at some point, which we discovered. I think we talked about that. How,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Heather, we had actually hit the line and then, water squirted out of it. So replaced that, dug a new trench, put a new PVC line in, and now it's daylighted, and that's great. It's not completely backfilled yet, just kind of letting that stuff settle in before I put the sod back
That's
on.
what everyone
right.
says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should definitely let that happen.
Yeah.
You will end up with a big depression in your yard otherwise.
Yeah. And then put new window well covers on. And I think the combination of those two things, we had a ton of rain last week, and it was dry as a bone again.
Wow.
So
I'm not sure about the practice of putting basement windows in.
I think it's a very
Yeah.
bad
It
practice.
just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It did when you had no electric lighting.
I guess.
yeah, there's so little light coming in through those things. And actually, I think there are 2 or 3 others. There may be more that are just buried. They've been covered with rigid foam. One of them is underneath the deck that was added years before we bought the house, and they just plugged them over. I mean, there's lights in that corner. It's not like I can't see what's going on there, and that's where the sump is actually.
You know what my basement needs? It needs more openings that are susceptible to leaking water.
Right.
And
That's what I was thinking.
and
energy.
airflow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not losing enough through the basement. We should put some windows in here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And make them single pane.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And make sure they're below grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Preferably they don't function either.
And these are like
if we could choose.
Yeah, these are like the jealousy, a bunch of little 2-inch panes
Yeah.
of glass, and there's a little winder, and they all kind of flip out.
Those
I
are-
mean,
Oh, you got flip outs.
Those are the worst.
So they just, I have them all taped up just so that water and stuff doesn't just
They
automatically
hemorrhage
kinda,
air.
come in there. Yeah,
I've
Yeah.
only ever had
They're
the
terrible.
sliders that don't actually slide because they're all rusted into one solid piece.
You've never had hoppers? Those
No.
are equally disastrous. They
No.
actually swing inward like a upside down casement.
Wait, I might have.
Yeah, it's a very common basement.
Wait, so the
arranged-
bottom swings in?
the bottom
or the top swings
the
in?
top swings in. The bottom is
Okay.
hinged.
Yeah. I've seen those in sheds, but I haven't had those in any of the basements that I've been a part of.
yeah.
Mine are covered with rigid foam.
That's the way to go.
So mine are just solid panes of glass with PVC stop. They don't open. They are just heat
Right.
releases.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to get it too hot down there.
I know it's,
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
it's too hot.
Houses need to breathe.
Yeah.
Well, that's.
They
I think
don't.
we,
They don't, by the way. In case that joke was
Thank you.
missed.
So I haven't been working on my patio. That,
Oh, yeah. We were supposed to ask Patrick what he was doing.
well, I'm going to just start talking about what I've been doing. So I went to the STAFTA show this past. Well, when this show, it'll be past this past week. The Specialty Tool and Fastener Dealers Association show in Phoenix, Arizona. And this is the place where professional tool dealers go to see new stuff and to meet with their suppliers.
Yeah, making deals.
And this is the absolute best place to find new tools. And this is one of my favorites here. This is a skill saw. They call this a carpentry chainsaw. They invented a new kind of tool for this. But it's very similar to, people might be familiar with the Prozzi beam cutter, which is a chainsaw bar and chain you put on a conventional circular saw, and it allows you to make deep cuts. And this one will cut all the way through an I-joist, which
So
I think is awesome.
It comes for anybody trying to. Well, anybody, I guess they can come to the site to see the pictures of it.
Yeah.
You have a post about this, I'm guessing. This thing was going gangbusters on Facebook when you posted about it.
Yeah.
It
Because it's awesome.
So for anybody trying to picture it, it's just a chainsaw blade coming down perpendicular to like the shoe of the saw, the base of the saw.
So it looks like a regular worm drive saw, except instead of a blade, it has a gear and a chain that points down.
So why do you like this one as opposed to the Prozzi?
So this is
Because
well
the
made.
Prozzi has been there. Yeah. Well,
Because this works.
the Prozzi's an attachment.
Yes,
right?
this is made to be this, and it's expensive. This is like going to be $700. But what makes it interesting is it has an oil tank, which is what you need to keep a chainsaw sharp. Right, it's on the top. It's got a good tensioning mechanism, much like that you'd find on a chainsaw. And perhaps most interestingly, every one of the teeth on this chainsaw chain has a cutting tooth instead of a gap. Some normal chainsaw chains have a tooth and then a gap and then a tooth. This has teeth all the way around the chain on every tooth, so it cuts more precisely.
So they're making their own chains, or they're partnering
So they
with
worked
somebody.
with Oregon. Is there another company that makes chainsaw chains? I don't think there is.
I don't know.
But I thought
You
that
can't
was
stop looking at it,
I
can you?
can't. And what's great about this company is their stuff is really good looking.
Well, can I push back on this though? I mean, who the hell is this for?
So for framers, timber framers.
So is this so you can, instead of miscutting one joist, you can cut all the joists wrong in one go?
Well, Matt and I were talking about this morning. When you get the joists delivered from the lumber yard, they're all banded together, right? And they're cut to the nearest foot, not the inch. So you got to cut them all. So this way you cut them all at once. Boom.
Yeah.
Did they have a longer bar? Is 16 as big as it
That's
goes?
as big as it goes.
I think they have shorter versions too, right?
Well, the Prozzi is shorter. I think this is going to be what it
you're
is.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you just use it for floors? Would you use it for?
I'd like to use it for cutting landscape timber 6x6s and stuff too. It would be ideal for that.
Could you not just use a chainsaw for any of this?
You could, but it's tough to be as precise with a chainsaw because it doesn't have a base, right? You're freehanding, so it would be like cutting joists with a chainsaw.
Yeah, which is what's happening here. I don't know. I might keep my $700 on this one, but I get the appeal. But I wonder how much of the appeal is just giant tools that do funky, crazy stuff that's going to send you to the hospital.
Well, so if I was a
Yeah.
framer, I would
It comes
totally
with-
have this.
It comes with a blood clot stop.
It comes with a tourniquet.
Yeah.
With onboard tourniquet.
Yeah.
What else did I see here, Jeff? Oh my God, this is cool.
Yeah.
So this is a cable stapler for non-metallic sheaths.
Yeah, what the hell?
cable.
Where's this been forever?
Right, exactly. So this is a cable stapler for your Romex cable, and it'll do both stacks of 2 or single cables, and it goes up all the mainstream residential sizes: 14.2, 14.3, 12.2, 12.3, 10.2, 10.3.
Has anybody had a powered version of this in the past? I know you can get like little hand stapler things.
I've never seen a tool like this.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell took so long?
Yeah.
Thank you, DeWalt,
Yeah,
finally.
They're going
Yeah.
to sell like 500,000 of these in the
Yeah.
first year. I
Oh
don't
my God,
see
I was
how
so
they don't.
excited when I saw it. I was like, this is just...
Especially paired with
Totally
lithium-ion
awesome thing.
batteries. I mean, what do you change it once a week?
So I think
Yeah.
they told me that it'll fire 1,400 staples,
Yeah.
which the guy told me, which is like equivalent to a week's work for the average electrician. So,
Right, and they'll pay for it in the first hour of billing, probably.
oh, and there's nothing that like is more complicated to hand nail than a freaking cable staple, right? And you got to hold the cable.
Certainly the most prone to banging your fingers.
It's a great way to
so
smash your fingers.
how does it work? Is it like just little feelers go on either side of the cable?
Yep, there's like a little pins that register it on both sides of the cable, and there's like a little safety tang that is pushed up to fire the staple, and it's not hard to press. It's very easy, and it automatically drives it to the right depth, no matter if you're fastening 1 or 2 cables.
How does it know how to stop so that there's a little that you're supposed to have a little wiggle room so the cable can move behind it, right?
Well,
Is
there's
that the
also
way it's supposed to be? Like you're supposed to have it tight, but not like you should be able to kind of slip it a little bit,
I make mine tight
make them tight.
because I want it to be nice and straight and pretty.
Well, it could still be straight and pretty.
And they have little insulators on the staples too, so it's not just the steel cable staple. It's got a little plastic
There's
insulator on there.
I just feel like when I look at something like this, there's got to be something I'm missing in terms of why nobody else did
Well, you
this.
can't
Like, what
use
did
it
they have to solve?
everywhere,
Well, what
right?
did they have to solve to make this happen, though, that nobody else has been able to do?
It doesn't seem like a huge engineering hurdle.
I know.
Yeah, you just wonder if nobody thought about it up to this point.
I wish it had a cool name instead of just a number from DeWalt.
What would you call it?
I don't know. Staple Slinger?
Electrician's friend.
The cable blaster.
Cable staple? It feels like it needs to run like cable stapler.
Yeah.
Cable stapler.
That's a go-to editorial.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a
Alliteration is-
rhyme or
yep.
alliteration.
We're not too complicated here. We have to keep it smart.
What
Simple 'cause we're
what else
stupid.
we got, Jeff? We've got to keep this moving here. So, the show is for tools and fasteners, so I figured I should at least show a fastener. But this one is a very cool structural screw by Grabber, And if folks who look on the website will see that it's got a number of different thread patterns on it, and it's meant to prevent mushrooming with decking, composite decking especially. And it's got a super sharp point. One of my few complaints with the GRK structural screws is they are often hard to get started, but this one has a super sharp point on it, and it'll get driving really easy.
When you say structural screws, are you talking about like for just like fastening two 2x together? Or are you talking about like a timber lock?
It's fastening 2x and sheathing, right?
Okay.
So it's not like a drywall screw, which doesn't have any strength. It's meant for connecting things that are important.
Cool.
Skill Saw is new miter saw, and you might think that they're just going with too much of a theme here with the worm drive, but if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because now the motor is centered on the slide rails, so there's less stress on the bearings in the slide mechanism, so it actually is better balanced, and it allows you to bevel further in both directions because there's not a motor in the way.
Right. Yeah, you get so I can't tell from the angle of this photo, but I'm guessing they also were able to eliminate the on a miter saw, always one side or the other, the fence is cut shorter so that so the motor can clear. Yes. Mm-hmm. So this would allow you to have a fence that goes tighter in towards the center, I'm guessing.
It's true.
Better support for your material.
This
I like that.
Is a nice tool, and I think that's going to be about $600. 12-inch.
Patrick can't stop looking at the screen. It's my favorite part.
Yeah.
It must be really distracting on the YouTube.
That's why.
Yes, I did forget my computer. This is a thing now, right?
I think my neighbor has one of these.
So I was at the Skill Saw booth, and the marketing...
Did you make it outside the Skill Saw booth?
They had a lot of cool stuff there. So Craig Hanba, who you might have run across, he's the marketing manager for Skill Saw. He's like, you got to check out this stuff by Ego. It was just it was part of their booth. It's owned by the same parent company. And with the recent chainsaw test I did, I've decided that the cordless outdoor power equipment is a legit thing. Mm-hmm. And when I saw these mowers, I was further convinced.
Yeah, like I said, my neighbor, I don't know what brand he has. It looks similar, like this coloring and the
So this
branding.
is like the one you can buy at Home Depot.
That might be it then. And it's really disturbing to watch somebody mow along without any sound. Like, so it's very weird.
They fired up one of these in the convention center for my benefit, and it was amazing how quiet. And I was immediately like, okay, that's why you have one of these.
Yeah, you could listen to music while
the
you're
other
mowing.
thing is that you can store this thing upright, which you can't do with a gas mower because the oil runs out of the crankcase. Yeah. So like in the wintertime, you can store this in a 1 foot by 2 foot section of your garage instead of 3 times as much. And you can lift it up to change the blade or clean it. I just don't know.
So what's their solution for varying yard sizes? Is it you buy more batteries, or you have to just do it in shifts, or it's not a concern because it does 10 acres on one charge?
So I asked them how long and how much mowing they can do, and it's very difficult because it depends on your grass. It depends on if it's wet. So they're not going to tell me, but they say that this
really helpful.
The model that this lady's demonstrating that has 2 batteries can do most people's suburban yards.
So 2 batteries are on there at the same time?
Exactly.
So it's like a double-seated thing?
Yeah. Not inexpensive. I think the top of the line one of these is almost $800, but it's self-propelled. It has a bagger, and it doesn't make any noise, and you never have to buy gas.
And apparently you can fold it up while wearing a dress.
Yes.
According to this photo.
This lady was she was a dynamo.
Maybe not. Maybe don't mow wearing that, but
yeah, open-toed shoes and mowing.
Yeah.
She started pushing that down the hallway of the convention center. It was pretty hilarious.
Does it have a regular blade?
Yeah.
Okay.
A 20-inch or 22.
Man,
they make both.
It's got to have some kind of gearing
21.
to make that work. You know what I mean?
It seems like, yeah.
Otherwise, it would just be sucking down. And why wouldn't it have gearing? You know,
right.
It would be a smart way to get more bang for your buck out of a small
once again,
spindle.
They have electric golf carts and Tesla automobiles that'll go 200 miles an hour almost. This is not a huge engineering hurdle, right? I was curious to see how the snowblower would work, though, because that seems like a harder thing to get. Yeah. Right? This is the last STAFTA thing. So this is another one of those things that you'd be like, why didn't anyone think of this? So it's a step ladder that unfolds from its A-shaped arrangement, so it makes a long extension ladder. It doesn't extend, but it's just a long straight ladder. So if you're like working on single story homes, this would reach pretty much anywhere you needed to go with one ladder, both outside and inside. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking about that a little earlier. It's a similar concept maybe to a Little Giant or whatever those ladders except it's got wider foot treads.
Yeah, it's got real treads that you can stand on, and it weighs like half as much. That's my complaint with those kind of articulated ladders.
Yeah.
They're so
heavy.
They're so heavy. I guess we have one more thing. So in the magazine a few months ago, we talked about the Frame Fast, which is a screw gun designed to connect the eave end of rafters or trusses to the top plate to get a load path, right? So this company solved that with a screw gun that's pretty automated, and now they have one to do the wall to the plate connection similarly. So when we're talking about building wind-resistant structures, this is a affordable and fast way to do it, I'm told. And this is a load-tested connection.
So do they just switch the tip out of the same gun?
Exactly. So it's the same gun, but it has a different head for this different connection.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this because they've kind of...
They've talked about it.
Yeah.
And they supposedly have one coming for the band joist to mud sill connection next.
It's funny that how spread out they are, you know? And I wonder if that's purposeful. Like, let's let people digest this one at a time.
So, I mean, it's a pretty small company. So, you know, your R&D budgets and time are at a premium. So
It's actually a huge company. I don't know how much. This is part of OM. This is what's the name of this company?
Fasten
Master. And obviously they have the timber lock and all those things. But they're part of OMG, which makes a lot of commercial stuff, like commercial, and like every commercial roof uses these products. So they must be a giant. But I wonder how much of that trickles down. I don't know.
Right, I don't know either. But I can tell you, I always get to talk to the guy who's like working on this stuff because it is that small of a company.
Yeah,
right? You
see the same faces.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very smart. They know their stuff.
So that was my little trip. So let's do a little bookkeeping here. So we heard from Father John Winklejohn, who was a Catholic priest in Port St. Joe in Mexico Beach, who wrote into the podcast asking us to discuss wind-resistant and storm-resistant construction techniques. His letter talked about a house in Mexico Beach that stood the hurricane, and we talked a lot about that. And we pointed out that there was some very expensive strengthening measures taken on that home, but Father John replied back that these 5 habitat houses in Panama City, and we saw this in a Washington Post story. Thank you, Matt. Describing how these affordably built houses also did really well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they lost like an air conditioner and like a window or something like that.
And you were talking about the Institute for Insurance for Business and Home. Let's see what that is.
Whatever it is.
Institute for Business and Home Safety.
Yeah, their Fortified Home program.
So this one was the habitat houses, or at least one of them talked about in the article. I don't know if they all were, was fortified gold. Mm-hmm. And they claim that doing that on this habitat house only cost a few $1,000s. And they say retrofitting an existing home should cost $1,000 to $2,000.
I mean, so it basically just comes down to go beyond code with your connections, right?
It's load path connections. The habitat houses had steel roofing or metal roofing. I'm assuming it's steel, and they also had hurricane shutters. So
one thing that I feel like people don't give enough credit to is if the wind finds a hole in your
breach,
house,
yeah,
you're toast.
It pressurizes the house and it blows apart.
Yeah, that's like your first line of defense.
Keep the windows intact.
An outswing front door is a good, so that it just harder blows. It'll just press harder against the jamb and stay closed rather than blowing in.
That's why casement windows are good for that same reason.
Casement windows.
But you also have to have good glass. So most glass is not up to the performance standards needed for high wind events. But I thought it was very interesting that these little houses, affordably built, also did really well. It's also important to point out that they were between 1 and 2 miles away from the shoreline, which means they're not subject to storm surge. Yeah, storm surge is way harder to deal with than wind. So
we have a couple articles coming up on that, working on houses up on, for lack of a better word, stilts.
Yeah, piers.
Building Science Corporation did some research, and they did actually a couple of model homes in down in New Orleans that kind of showed how people could do this and make it look good and functional, and you could soak it and it would dry out. And so we have an article coming up on that. It's pretty cool stuff.
And who's the author on that, Justin?
I think Coffee is, and I don't know. Rob, do you remember the article? Rob's in the room, by the way.
He's spying on us to see how good a job we're doing.
Okay, I was working on my laptop.
Forget it
what
then.
was the question? No.
Who's the guy in the Building Science Corp did that flood house? Remember I had a meeting about that?
Oh, the flood house.
You guys are
he doesn't
terrible.
remember either.
This is like the worst audio program ever. Sorry. Well, so look for that.
It's Rob's fault.
There's another organization in Northwest Florida, and they do retrofit. They Fortify Homes, and they've done 14,000 retrofits. And their CEO, Garrett Walton, says that their average cost is about $9,200 to make improvements to these. So when we were talking about it, it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's relative, right?
And it depends on where you are. I mean, like you said, like if you're right on the shoreline, it's a completely different animal from being a
mile or
back
two,
away
even
from
a mile or
that.
two in. Yeah,
because again, we had brought up before that the Fortified Home Gold standard for hurricane resistance still only brings you up, I think, to Category 3. So, I'd like to know exactly what kind of wind those people had at those habitat houses that are still standing.
They were saying that the hurricane had winds approaching Category 4, but it was a Category 3 storm.
Now doesn't seem to be the time to be building a house right on the shore.
No.
Just doesn't seem like a good long-term proposition.
We talked a little bit about this. Like
Since the shore might be moving.
There's lots of land in Montana, guys.
It's gorgeous, by the way.
Yeah.
And, beach houses used to be shacks, right? It was a beach shack. And it blew away, and then next year you'd come with your truckload of stuff and you'd put it back, right? It wasn't this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to have that, just get a yurt, put it up in the summer, take it down.
Or an RV and drive away.
Yeah, that too.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's try and help some people here.
Oh, man.
That's the best part of the show. All right, this is from Phil from Maryland, and I get the impression from his email that he's a contractor. So we installed 1,000 square feet of 5-inch red oak flooring in the kitchen, living room, dining area, and foyer and a hallway of this house they worked on. It was installed over 30-pound felt paper and was stapled every 8 inches. The floor was allowed to acclimate for 3 weeks, and the moisture content was 9 to 11% when installed, the exact same range as the subfloor. The floor was then stained finished with 2 coats of oil-based poly. And then what happened? In the summertime, it began to significantly cup. Moisture readings were taken. Whole house moisture readings were taken. The basement at the time had a relative humidity of 55 to 53 versus the upstairs. And we could not come up with a good theory, so they wanted to know why this floor was cupping, so they called the NWFA.
National Wood Flooring Association?
Excellent. And so they had a guy come out there, and he didn't know what was going on either. I think we're going to know what's going on here. And so the floor flattened out when it got to be the heating season again, but then when the summer came along again, it's cupped again. So he wants to know what to do. So they hired a second inspector to say that, to find out what was going on. And they still haven't gotten a satisfactory answer. And this is the part I want to read most, Justin. Thanks. Love the podcast. Patrick is doing a great job filling in for the MIA Justin Fink.
I'm no longer MIA.
Yeah.
So what's going on with this guy's floor?
Well,
I think I know a few things.
Yeah. So, as much as we've been talking about my wet basement, I actually have sort of like the exact opposite thing happened throughout my entire house. And
when you say exact opposite, what do you mean?
So
the basement's cupping?
Every single floorboard, I've got red oak, but strip,
Okay.
2 1/4 inch. Every single board is crowned.
So it's
reverse
raised
cupped.
in the center.
Yeah, raised in the center, which was a huge pain in the butt when I decided to sand out the floors when I took out that wall to expand the
Oh
bedroom.
yeah. Yeah.
And I ended up going at it with a palm sander and a just
That's
to
the
try to
right
get
tool
down-
for the job.
Yeah, to get that last little bit in between each board. And man, was that labor intensive. And I think what we're talking about essentially is, the differential in moisture that's coming up either from the basement or, in my case, maybe my basement was drier than the rest of my house. I don't really know. It's also possible that when the floor was initially put down, they sanded it too soon and, it had cupped a little bit.
I think that's the case with your floor.
Yeah, and
because it
it's
doesn't
very
usually go the
possible.
other way.
Yeah, it doesn't usually, but it is possible.
So what Matt is alluding to is we think that because his basement has a higher relative humidity than the rest of his house, the bottom side of the flooring, right, is taking on moisture, which makes it grow, and then makes the edges turn up.
That's what it should do.
That's what it should do.
If your basement is wetter than the conditioned part of the living area,
Yes.
then it should be cupping.
And I think the flooring was installed too wet to begin with. 12% is pretty high. The recommended is like 7.5% for wood floors to go in most of the country. It varies.
Yeah, Maryland's really humid though.
Well, this is also he says 1,000 square feet of red oak. It accumulated for 3 weeks, and he wrote accumulated. Sorry, acclimated for 3 weeks, and that the moisture content in the floor matched the moisture content in the house, which is fine. Like you're supposed to let it acclimate. That's good. But what he doesn't say here is, was the HVAC system on? Because
Right.
a lot of times people do this and they go, well, I made it match. So what's the problem? The problem is you want to turn on the heat or AC and then make it match.
Or install it at a lower moisture content.
Right.
Don't let it take on water, which I think
Right.
is what happened.
Because if everything was at 9 to 11% and you installed it and then you go, all right, cool, we're all finished. Let's button up the drywall, put on the AC or the heat, and now suddenly you're at a different moisture content. You're screwed. So this is why, like, you'll hear a lot of contractors say they won't even touch these, the finish flooring and trim and stuff until after the whole heating and cooling system's been commissioned
and if you have a new
operational.
house, you got a lot of construction moisture to be dealing
ton.
with. So, I mean, like you're talking hundreds of pounds of water in the
Right.
materials. So you need to let that get dried out.
Right. It gets rained on all the time while you're working on it, and then you close the front door and you decide that it's just dry now. No, you gotta dry it out.
The other thing is people don't realize how much you have to nail wider flooring, right? So I forget what he said.
Yeah, it feels ridiculous.
Every 8 inches,
It
I think you
feels
said.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
So 8 inches is what you want to use for 2¼ inch flooring, right? So you want the same amount of nails for a square foot of 2-inch flooring that you would for 8-inch flooring, which means that when you start to get wider boards, their spacing has to get much tighter. And that would help restrain some of that movement potentially caused by the underside taking on water. So for a 5-inch red oak board, you should be stapling every 3 or 4 inches, according to Howard Brickman, who is the country's top consultant on wood flooring.
Yeah.
I met Howard.
So like that's and like I said, 6 to 8 inches for 2¼ 3-inch flooring should be every 5 or 6. 4-inch should be 4 inches. 5-inch should be 3 to 4 inches. 6-inch board should be every 3 inches. 7-inch boards every 2 to 3 inches. So that is a ton of stapling or fastening, and people just don't do it. So.
Yeah. Also, the Hardwood Flooring Association, they also did say that there will be more cupping
On wider-
expected on wider boards,
Sure.
and they also mentioned that there'll be a difference if it's plain sawn versus
Rift sawn.
quarter
yeah,
sawn.
Yeah.
huge. I mean, the wider you go, the more you got to pick stable species, and you got to pick a stable cut of wood.
I understand why people like the wide plank flooring, but I think it is inherently more problematic than narrower strips.
Or get the wide plank, but then face nail it. I mean, that's why a lot of those old floors were done that way.
Yeah.
Because then it won't cup, and it looks good.
Except you got like dust bunnies building up in the. Oh my gosh! No thanks.
Yeah, I love it.
what I grew up
wide?
with.
How wide can you get? What were you at? Like 12 inches, 18,
Nah,
24?
It was probably like
97?
8-inch. I was in Vermont last year, and this place, I mean, it was wider than my foot was long. I think they were probably like 14-inch wide.
I swear, when I-
boards.
the
It
board-
was insane.
The bedroom I grew up in, one whole room, one board.
You never told us you grew up in a tree stump.
Nah, yeah.
All right. All right. This question number 2 is from Chris, and he's in Mocksville, North Carolina. Hello, friends. I'm a regular podcast watcher. I guess he's watching us on YouTube, right? Online subscriber, and appreciate this FHB offering. I have a dilemma in our house. OSB sheathing rotting under a covered porch. The ledger has no appreciable flashing or continuation of a water barrier. The sheathing below the porch has been left essentially uncovered.
God, every time.
I know.
It's always the same. It's always the same scenario.
I don't know how much of his...
I've been under this deck. I've seen this view.
I don't know how much I want to read. So he discovered this because he was replacing some polybutylene piping in his basement, and I guess he had some failures. For those of you who don't know, polybutylene piping was one of those good ideas until it wasn't. So it was a new plastic pipe, except that it started leaking almost immediately after it went mainstream.
Sure. It's always good.
That's why you should always stick with like time-tested stuff, people. So of
Lead
course,
pipes.
lead pipes. They last for millennia. So in this wall, wow, you can see what's going on. So that water is just running in there and accumulating. So he wants to know what's going on. Do you want to show the other photos, Jeff? And so this is the porch, and the slide we saw earlier was the area below the porch decking.
Looks like a whole second-story addition held up by toothpicks.
Well, so there's a number of things going on here that we need to talk about.
Yeah, what are those?
So I honestly think
4x4s?
I think that the moisture problems at the bottom of his walls are not the whole story.
Oh, all right. Cool. That makes
Yeah.
that's more interesting. What do you think's going on?
So
I love when it gets complicated.
okay, so he even acknowledges, for sport, our water and electric run right about where you would place freestanding deck support near the house. Okay, so that's one concern. And the deck supports need to be replaced to a combination of code compliance and demo for proper water management. So he's already acknowledging that his posts are not big enough for that room it's supporting above.
Well, can we talk just real quick about if it was just the sheathing, what would we do? Because, I mean, I feel like a lot of people are just going to have that problem.
So I think you got to rip off the deck that's there.
Well, so, I mean, but it happens because they put house wrap up in the house when they're building it, and then they cut it back to put the ledger onto the wall.
Right.
And oftentimes it's like anything below that just gets cut off along with it, or even if they just cut out a rectangle in the house wrap, put up the board, and then don't flash it, it's as good as having nothing because
right.
water's going in there. So this turns into, Jeff, you did this thing at your house, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Jeff can come over and fix it for this guy. And
So you got to take the ledger off.
yeah.
And you got to flash it somehow. You can leave the deck there. You can temporarily support it. That's what I do.
Yeah. Just cut the ledger free from the joist, cut the ledger out, patch the sheathing,
Put it
and then
back.
Put it back in.
With water management details.
Yeah, I wouldn't-
head flashing over the ledger.
I would be tempted on a regular deck to even if you didn't want to cut off the ledger. It depends if the ledger's also rotted. If the ledger was in good shape, I would be tempted to rig up something so that I could just maybe with wall jacks or
Just pull it away.
you just pull it away enough
Uh-huh.
that you could stick a reciprocating saw blade up there, cut the fasteners away, or pull them out from the from the underside.
One thing, if you do have to remove the ledger anyway, is I would shorten the joints slightly so you could put some kind of spacer there to allow the free drainage of water.
That's a fair point.
Yep.
Yep.
Keep that away from the building if you can, and make sure it's waterproof back there.
Yep. Peel and stick.
Yeah.
Now,
All right.
what are we going to tell him about his...
That solves everybody else's problem.
The room above the deck is scary to me, that it looks completely underbuilt.
Well, so you see this a lot. You see cantilevered additions, not cantilevered, but you see bump outs.
Let's call it a
second floor
sunroom
bump outs
addition. Yeah.
That are on 4x4s for posts. And let's call them 8 to 10 feet off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the rules and regulations are for how much you can carry with a single 4x4, but
Well, I can tell you that he's also got roof load, right?
yeah.
And he's got snow load potentially. So, I mean,
How come we can see the underside of the joists of the bump out floor?
Probably because it's not insulated.
Yeah, and
so
there's living space above that.
My
Yeah.
guess is this was either an elevated deck or an elevated sunroom that became more than that, and
Yeah.
they didn't do all the upgrades necessary
Right,
to make
right.
it safe.
Yeah, this seems structurally unstable to me. In terms of racking resistance, I think you're at serious risk here of something happening, a wind event, let's call it, and this thing just sliding off to one side and collapsing.
Additionally, I'm sure they didn't upgrade the footings for this thing when they converted this to a 3-season or 4-season
Yeah.
room. So
This is the exact reason why, when I did my porch, the inspector made me pour footings that assumed that someday somebody would put a story above it.
and that's what I was telling at one other podcast that was such an arbitrary decision, but
Yeah.
it seems like a good idea now, doesn't it?
Well, I guess they got
Yeah.
burned by it enough
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. One other thing, we don't have a picture of it up here, but the way that porch floor is covered, it's basically built like a deck.
Yeah.
And he's got the boards running parallel to the house. It's basically it looks like
It was a
probably-
deck.
Yeah, it was a deck. It looks like 1x6 PT. And at least in the past, I think, porches were typically built with the planks running perpendicular to the house, and so the framing's running the other direction, and it's tongue and groove, and it's basically drains away from the house. It's
meant to shed water.
It's meant to shed water.
Yeah.
And I don't know that this is pitched. It's hard to tell, but since it's built like a deck and those things are gapped, the wind-driven rain is going to easily get between those boards and get back to that sheathing below there. So
Totally.
that could have contributed to this. And thinking about
So this is my
replanking
favorite
that.
part of the letter. What does it say?
Is it another compliment for you?
No, sadly. What did he say? He wanted a
Limited scope.
limited
that it?
scope repair.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
no can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of this sounds real Mickey Mouse. It's not to code. I mean, he admits it's not to code, and yeah.
What else can we say about this?
Said differently, how can I get out of this as quickly and effectively as possible? Is there any proper way to flash around the ledger without pulling it off? No. Would house wrap properly tied in be an appropriate water barrier for repair?
Sure.
Or would you use a different product? Yeah, I guess you could use that. It's still not the best because if you have house wrap pinch between the sheathing and the ledger, it's just hard to dry back there.
Yeah, but he's going to have a head flashing on top of the ledger.
That's true.
It's going to be complicated by the fact he has a door, though. So I think anything that you can do to,
How would you detail the water barrier at the bottom of the repaired sheeting below the porch? That's just be house wrap or peel and stick, whatever you want to do.
And you could side it if you wanted to, right? And that would protect it from UV. I don't know how much UV it's getting, but that would also keep the weather barrier in place.
Yeah. Listen to more podcasts, Chris. We'll get you taken care of. Start at episode 1.
Look back to Jeff's wall rebuild. Did we have photos of that, Jeff?
Yeah, I think we did share some photos.
Did we?
I think so.
I
think we
shared it
talked
with you
about
guys, but I don't know that I ever.
I thought we talked about it.
Maybe we did. I don't know.
Well, maybe you could get those to Rob and he can put them up and show
Do you have process photos?
Chris what to do.
I mean, hey, I'm at this point, so I snapped a shot.
Most of it's when everything is ripped apart and
Yeah.
I have no basement wall, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Chris, paint that OSB before you put the house wrap on. That's something I would tell you to do with a good oil-based primer or paint, preferably both. And that's going to make it last a lot longer too.
Under the house wrap?
Yep.
You're still on this kick of you're just going to paint your sheathing next time, aren't you?
I'm convinced that's what Zip System is. It's OSB with paint on it.
I don't think so.
Why not just put
Huber is going to
put
write me
zip
an
under there then?
horribly angry email saying,
Yeah.
no, it is a polymer coating. It is not paint.
What's paint? Polymer coating.
See what they say. They're never going to sponsor that podcast again, are they?
It'll all be worth it.
Oh, no.
We've exposed them.
I don't know that that's paint.
It's really
just
nice.
Like, it seems like
No.
it's paint to me.
It's really nice green paint, though. I wonder if they had different versions. Like at one point where they're like, let's do orange
They can try
and
different
purple.
colors?
Yeah, like what sells?
Yeah,
I'm
like why
convinced
green and
that's,
orange? It's like a reddish brown. Would you call it red or brown?
I call it brown.
Yeah. Remember back in the beginning when it was green for walls and brown for the roof? And then they were like, no, don't do that. It's, it's a mix and match. It's as simple as this. And then they kind of tried to send out this release, this kind of this course correction of like, it's as simple as this, and they had all these diagrams, and they were so confusing. Like, wait, so where do I use which one?
I thought the colors did differentiate where you use them.
No, not anymore.
Because even in a lot of, at least the old literature, I mean, the pictures would be of the walls covered in green and the roof covered in
That's what I
red
remember.
or brown.
Yeah.
Right, but you see a lot of houses that are all one color now.
Well, it's based on the thickness, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Half versus 5/8.
Right.
It's good to put 5/8 on the roof anyway.
I'm not carrying that up there. I guess we got a lull or a lumper.
Or a apprentice.
Yeah, lumper.
It's a good test, right? See how good your lumper is.
Or lunker. Which one is it?
I have no idea. Lunker,
I think
maybe?
a lunker's a potato.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. So lunker it is.
All right.
Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
This next question is from Stephen MacDougall.
MacDougall.
He's from just outside of Toronto by way of Scotland.
Yeah.
He says, I love the show. I'd like to get your thoughts on how I might be able to limit condensation that is forming on the interior surface of the concrete door sills of my 1964 bungalow. I know it is a thermal bridging issue, but how would I go about insulating the surface? Do the concrete sills normally extend into the interior like this? There is a forced air heat register close by, and the humidity within the house is not excessive. Only a little bit of condensation forms on the windows. So that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a lot of indoor humidity, Stephen, for starters.
Might have really good windows.
Yeah, if you have really good windows, you're not going to get condensation because it's just not cold enough for the water vapor to come out of vapor form.
So this is essentially a concrete, it looks like a precast sill or
I
something.
think so, too. And I think this might be a Canadian thing that we're less familiar with.
Yeah, I've never seen this before.
Yeah, I haven't either.
So it looks essentially like you had a big block of concrete and then you put the door on top of it. And
Which seems intuitively like it would be a good long-lasting thing to put the door on, but it's also a thermal bridge right from the outside to the inside. And I think that has a lot to do with where his condensation is coming from.
I guess what I don't understand, though, is it looks like from the outside shot, which Jeff has up on the screen, is we're looking at a big concrete curb, and then it has a piece of wood, and then the door with the pre-installed metal sill is sitting on top of that.
Right.
So which part is getting condensation on the inside? Because if you tracked that line of where that wood is to the inside,
it seems like
that's wood that we're looking at.
Yeah, but there was another shot where he's pointing at it, and it looks like it is concrete. And I think it's some of that black I think is scraped away.
Is there a shot of it from the inside with the door open?
No, not that I have.
Well, we need more information.
So it does have a thermally broken sill. Right, it's not aluminum all the way from the outside to the inside. There's an adjustment strip, which is typical. And I actually had a link to photos of thermally broken sills, and there are 100 different kinds. So that's not the issue. My guess is the issue is air leakage under the door.
That's what I'm wondering, too.
I think that, and you can tell on the outside, too. You see the paint is peeling on that little piece of wood underneath the... So once again, either interior air is exfiltrating, coming from inside the house and blowing the paint off that exterior board, or it's leaking on the to the inside and creating a cold spot that water vapor is condensing and creating the mold.
Well, I think you also have to consider that that's also probably just taking some foot traffic. That board on the outside is getting some heel kicks and
yeah, but I think it's air leakage.
But that was where my brain went first. Was it's just that's the nearest cold surface for the air to condense on.
Yeah,
and concrete's a thermal bridge, but it's not that horrific. I mean, I guess they are in Canada. It's pretty cold there.
Yeah,
I think I would try and caulk under the door and the gap between the sill and the flooring on the inside to stop that air movement.
You would caulk under the door?
Under the sill. Did I say under the door? So just caulk the door shut and go out somewhere else for the winter.
Yeah.
No, I would caulk under the door sill and on the inside between the tile and the threshold.
And then when that doesn't work, you're going to have to pull that sill up and excavate out some of that concrete
and make
just put down 2 inches of polyiso or something like that, and then put the sill back on top of it.
So this happened in my house in Stowe, just because it's so cold, and the threshold doesn't seal completely.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you live in a really cold climate, you'll actually see like a frost accumulation where the lock is where the knob is, right? Because there's that little space of air, and this buildup of frost happens on the inside.
We have some friends in Vermont, and farmers, and they learned that they can't leave their boots by the back door because they get up in the morning and they're frozen.
Sounds comfortable.
It's an uninsulated farmhouse. What are you going to do?
I think that's all the time we have. Do you guys have anything you want to add? We did this thing in your absence, Justin, where a quick thing I'm calling talking points.
Ooh.
And this is stuff I come across.
And this one's great.
This is great. Well, it's not great. It's terrible.
It's not great for the person it happens to.
So, when you guys are leaving the home center, please make sure that your stuff is secured if you're leaving the lumber yard, because people get hurt. The story comes from a Florida TV station where...
Always Florida.
Always Florida.
It's always Florida. What is wrong with Florida?
So, this guy lost a piece of plywood. I'm assuming it's a guy. Lost this piece of plywood, and it landed directly in someone's windshield. So,
Flew like a frisbee right through.
Yeah.
I was driving home last night behind, it's firewood season here in great state of Connecticut. And there was a tree company that had the box truck, and they were going out to make their evening delivery of firewood to whoever bought it. So the back of this box truck had cordwood stacked up nice and flush to the back with nothing holding it in. Just a wall of wood stacked.
Gravity's got it.
And I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
If one little thing happens, all of that wood is going to fall out. And
Right.
then what?
If he's
Pull
gonna-
up traffic to
if
get
he's
it
going to
all...
get rear-ended, all that cordwood's
Yeah.
going to land on someone's hood.
How hard is
Yeah.
it to put a gate closed or put a net up or something?
And I follow a Facebook page that has a lot of professional contractors who end up at the home center and taking photographs of the stupid things people try and do with their vehicles to get material home. So don't be one of those people.
I have a small rant that's associated with the home center too. Because nowhere else in my life do I go shopping somewhere where I have to participate to such a high degree in the purchasing of the products I want.
Oh,
where
I
I
know.
have to it's over years and years of going there, I've learned that if I actually want to get out, I need to stack the cart in a way. First, I need to check that there's labels on every piece that's in the cart, because if there's not, every single time, they don't know what to do.
You know what my
As
hack?
if it's never happened before.
I have a good hack for that. So you take a picture of the label that is on the bin of whatever stuff you're buying is. So you're buying half-inch insulation sheets or whatever. Take a photograph with your phone of that SKU number.
You mean if you notice that there's no tag on it? Okay.
I take a picture anyway.
Oh, you do it.
Yes.
I mean, how bad of is that you have resorted to that as your standard protocol now? Because what happens is you go up there, they go, oh, I
we don't know what
can't
this
find
is.
the tag on this.
Do you still want this?
And then they just look at you kind of going, I don't know what to do
What's
here.
this called? And then they search through the 16 pages of menus it takes to get to the product.
Yeah, it's like...
Is this it?
I don't understand how we can't get this fixed. Why is it... It seems easy. If there's material coming in, make sure it has a tag on it, for one. That seems like something you can control. I mean, Home Depot and Lowe's have a lot of clout. I can imagine that they can dictate, hey, we need tags on this stuff.
Sure.
And secondly, I mean, whatever.
So when I worked at the lumber yard for 6 years, I think it was, I had to memorize all of the SKUs for every single product that we sold, because you were not going to the 3-ring binder to look up what something is called, because they have stuff to do. They do not have time for you to figure this out.
Right. It's just, I don't know.
Anyway.
Shop
That's
better
my rant.
places. Yeah.
That's my talking point. I don't know what this segment is, but that's my talking point.
Yeah.
That was it. Let me, I think that's it, guys. We did did we mention the special deal we have on the website?
We did 20% off. It's holiday season. I have my
right.
recommendation. My recommendation for people who are looking for a gift idea is get that archive, the thumb drive archive.
What's that
Yeah.
cost?
I don't know. You ask me hard questions, I know the answer to.
It's not bad. I mean, the first time it answers one of your questions, it's going to pay for itself.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can also get a membership to the website, and you'll have access to the same sorts of things. But
I'm with you.
I'm trying to filibuster a little bit so I can get to the price on the website, but I can't get there, so I give up.
So we're going to close on that note. Thanks to Justin and Matt for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us whenever you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. I'll let you say it this time, Justin.
What am I saying? Oh, keep craft alive and happy building.